Hello, my name is Matthew Perks and welcome to this Digital Reduce tutorial. What we'll be doing today is using some elements from Digital Reduce's new drag and drop series to make an energy shield. So when we're done, we should have something that looks a bit like this.
Contact at base 419! I need backup!
So as you can see, that's quite a cool high action scene, and the energy shield looks pretty good. So we'll go into After Effects now and begin making it, and you'll see just how easy it is to use Digital Reduce's drag and drop series as elements in compositions such as this. So let's begin. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is bring in our source footage, and we'll go ahead and make a new composition with it. So basically what's going on in this scene is that this character, played by me, has seen a spaceship that's coming in to invade his planet and has to go and warn someone, but they start firing on him, so he has to draw a force shield just here with his shield creation device to protect himself. And unfortunately it gets hit by the spaceship and starts to disintegrate, so he has to run back to his bunker. So it's quite a high action scene. So the first thing we want to do is track this footage in 3D, but we don't want to track the whole thing, so we'll trim it to just the area where the force field will be visible. So we'll just go to a few frames before it starts powering up. So we'll make sure our source footage is selected and hold down Alt and then press the left square bracket, which will just trim the footage to that point. We'll go forward and set the end point. We'll go with this frame. So the same thing, hold down Alt, but this time press the right square bracket. So that's trimmed our footage nicely, and when we track it in 3D, it will only track this range. So we'll go ahead and track it now. So we'll right click the footage and select Track Camera. This adds the 3D camera tracker effect to the footage and begins analysing it. So once the camera tracker has done its job, you should have lots of little track points on your footage. Now these track points are actually representations of various features in the frame, and After Effects can use them to calculate the camera movement in 3D space. So the first thing we need to do is just select a few and make a ground plane that will represent the floor. So we'll just go with these few and then click and drag this red target about just to see whether it represents the floor quite nicely. I think the angle's a bit wrong actually, so we'll just try another selection. And that's better. So I'm happy with that one, so we'll right click it and select Create Solid and Camera. Now this creates a 3D camera that moves like the real camera did when the footage was being filmed, and it also makes a 3D solid using the position data of these points. So if we just preview it, you'll see that it sticks to the floor as if it was really there when it was being filmed. So we'll go ahead and delete 3D camera tracker from the source footage because we don't need it anymore. And we'll go into our project panel and go into solids and hit enter to rename this green solid, and we'll call it base, just to keep things clear. Now the reason we trimmed the footage was obviously just to track that area, so now that we've done that we can actually expand the footage to its fullest again. And now we can begin making the energy shield. So the first thing we're going to do is make a new composition and call it Energy Shield Comp, and we'll make it about 9 seconds long, which is the length that I want the energy shield to be active for. So we'll hit OK. Now what we want to do is make a new white solid, so we'll go to Layer, New Solid, and we'll call it Transition, and make sure it's comp size, and make sure it's white, and hit OK. Now what we want to do is add the effect called linear wipe. So we'll go to Effect, Transition, Linear Wipe, and we'll set its wipe angle to -90 so that it comes in from the right hand side and turns black from there. Now the goal of all this is to actually make a displacement map that is going to warp our energy shield so that it looks like it's coming upwards from the ground progressively as the character swipes his hand along the floor. So it will be powering up progressively from the floor as his hand goes around in a circle. So what we want to do is have a look and see how many frames it takes for his hand to swipe along the floor. So we'll just go forward until the drawing has been complete and keep a note of the frame count here, which are the last numbers here that are changing, and it's about 12 frames. So we'll go back into Energy Shield Comp and make sure we're at the first frame, and we'll select the stopwatch on transition completion and go forward those 12 frames. We can see that by having a look here, and we'll set the transition completion to 100. So now over 12 frames it swipes into blackness, and we'll set the feather to 200. Now what we want to do is pre-compose this so that the linear wipe will be seen as part of the displacement map when it comes time to use it. So we'll go to Layer, Pre-compose, and we'll call it Transition, and make sure we've got Move All Attributes into New Composition selected, and hit OK. So now that we've made our displacement map, we need to go and choose some footage that we're going to make our energy shield with. And what we're going to use are some elements from Digital Juicer's new drag and drop series. So here we are in Juicer 3 where we can have a look at these clips. So we'll go into animations and go into drag and drop and have a look at what's available. I have two packages installed here, Glitch Effects and Reflective Thoughts. Now Glitch Effects is a package that contains lots of noise and digital interference, and it's got a lot of potential for use as elements in compositions. So we're going to use some of these clips to make our energy shield. So we'll just have a look at a few and choose some that we think might be suitable. As you can see, there's really quite a lot of variations here, and you can make some really interesting looks with it. I think I'm going to go with this one, so we'll just drag and drop it into the batch panel and select a few more. This one looks like it will be quite good for when the energy shield is collapsing, so we'll choose that one as well. And we'll go with that one. And we'll go with this one as well. Now what I also want is a clip that will be sort of more gentle for when the energy shield stabilizes, but still gives it a bit of motion. So a great package for something like this is Reflective Thoughts, which contains lots of really peaceful abstract light effects. So we've got things like this sort of shards effect that could be quite useful for something underwater, and something like this. I'm going to choose this one for the force field when it stabilizes, so we'll just drop that into the batch panel as well. Now what I want to do is just change the frame rate of these clips before I render them so that they will match my project, which is 25 frames per second. Obviously you just need to choose a frame rate that will match your own project settings, because yours might not be 25 frames per second. So we'll select the first one and press Settings, and we'll just change the frame rate to 25, and we'll change the field order to progressive, and change the output location to a folder that you know the location to. I'm going to choose a folder called Drag and Drop on my desktop. So that's changed the render settings of this clip, and we want to apply those settings to the rest of the clips as well. So all we'll do is just right click it and select Copy Attributes, and then press Ctrl A to select all of the clips, and just right click one and select Paste Attributes, And all that does is just paste the render attributes of this first clip that we modified to the rest of the clips so that they all match. So now that we've sorted all that, we'll just render them all and bring them into After Effects. Okay, so here we are back in After Effects, and we'll just import those clips we just rendered. So we'll right click the project panel, go to Import, File, and just select them. And we'll just drag and drop them into our Energy Shield composition. And we'll disable all but one of them. Now, these clips don't actually have any transparency, so what we're going to do is just key out the dark bits, because we do need transparency for later on. Just to show you what I mean, you can see that this transition composition is completely being blocked out by this no resistance clip. So there's the white, and if I enable no resistance, it covers it completely. So what we'll do is just go to Effect, Keying, Luma Key, and set the threshold to about 30, which will key out the black, leaving only the lighter parts without transparency. We'll add an edge feather of about 3 just to make it a bit softer. So as you can see, we can still see the transition comp through this layer. Another effect we want to add is tint. So we'll go to Effect, Color Correction, Tint, and we'll change the map white to a nice blue colour, because that's the overall colour I'm going for with my shield. And we'll hit OK, but I'm going to change the amount to 0 for now, as we'll come back to it later. Now what we want to do is select both Luma Key and Tint and copy them, so Ctrl C, and paste them onto the other clips. So now each clip has some transparency applied wherever there is darkness on it. So we're just going to select all of the clips again and change the transfer mode to screen. And now what we want to do is change the timing of these clips so that it looks like the energy shield is powering up. So we'll just disable the transition layer because we don't actually need it to be visible from now on, and just change the timing of these clips so that they are sort of run into each other a bit and go one into the other without too much of a gap. There's a bit too much of a gap there, I think. So that selection looks quite good to me. So what we want to do now is make it look like it gradually stabilizes. So what we're going to do is duplicate this no resistance clip and choose a frame from it that we'd like the force field to sort of stabilize into. So we'll just solo it and just scrub through just to see which one looks quite good. I like that frame, so we'll just go to Layer, Time, Freeze Frame. So now this layer is just that frame all the way through, and we can extend it as much as we like. I'm just going to flip it actually, because I think it will be better this way round. And we'll just press T on the keyboard to bring up opacity and go to the frame where we want it to be fully stabilized, and press the stopwatch button, and then go backwards in the timeline and set this value to 0%. So basically all that does is fade it in. So we'll just have a look at how that looks with all the other layers. So there we go, it sort of fades in and stabilizes a bit. But the problem is, when it stabilizes, it looks a bit too flat because it's just one frame, there's nothing going on. So what we're going to do is use the Falling Whispers clip, which is from the Reflective Thoughts package, and just use it to make this still frame look a bit more dynamic. So we'll just bring it in and change the transfer mode to Color Dodge, which sort of makes a nice intense effect and just looks like the frame is sort of strobing, but I think it's a bit too slow, so we'll speed it up. The easiest way to do this, for this kind of clip is just to go into the project panel and reinterpret the footage. So we'll right click it, go to interpret footage, main, and we'll make it 4 times faster by increasing the frame rate to 100 frames per second and hit OK. So that's a bit faster and makes it look a little bit more interesting. So for this also we'll just fade it in, so press T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity options, go to the frame where the force field fully stabilizes, hit the stopwatch and go back on the timeline and set this value to 0. So now it fades in with the still frame and then gives a nice fluxy effect to the still image. So overall the colours are kind of similar, but these few clips in the middle are a bit green. So what we're going to do is just use that tint effect that we pasted to all of them to just adjust the colours. So we'll select one and go into the effect controls and change the tint amount until it gets to more or less the same colour palette as what we're aiming for. Now you don't want to say set the amount of tint to 100 because it takes out all colour variation. So just having it at something like 60% should be enough. And we'll just go through the other clips just to make them also about right blueness. So that's all similar in colour, so it looks like it's the same noise source. So now that we've made the power up of our shield, we can begin to give it a bit of form. So we'll just select these clips and pre-compose them, and we'll call it Shield Comp. So that's grouped all of our clips nicely into one composition. Now what we want to do is add a displacement map effect to this composition that's going to be affected by the transition composition we made earlier. So we'll go to Effect, Distort, Displacement Map, and set the displacement map layer to Transition, and change the Use for Vertical Displacement to Luminance. If we change the values, you can see that depending on the luminance of this transition layer, it warps the shield composition. So what we'll do is just set the vertical displacement to negative 750, so it's completely off the screen and makes it look like it's coming up from the floor. So now that we've composed our energy shield, we'll import it into our main composition. So we'll go to our main composition and we'll go to the frame where the energy shield first starts powering up, which is about here. So we'll go to our project panel and select our energy shield composition and drag it to this point in time in this composition. So now what we need to do is make this layer 3D, and we'll shift parent it to the base to give it the attributes of this base layer. And we'll unparent it again, because we don't actually need it parented, it was just to get it into the right position. And we'll just move it and rotate it so that it's just hovering in midair in front of the character for now. And what we'll do is change the renderer to Ray Traced 3D. So we'll hit this renderer button and choose Ray Traced 3D. Now this adds some new options to layers. So we'll bring down the layer options, and as you can see there's geometry options which wasn't there before. So we'll bring that down. So we'll set the curvature to negative 85, which bends the layer in 3D space and gives it some form. And we'll increase the amount of segments to 10 so we get rid of those square edges. So now it's nice and smooth. So now that we've done that, we can actually position it as accurately as we can inside the scene. So we'll just press T on the keyboard to bring up the opacity options of this layer and turn down the opacity just so we can see through it a bit. And we'll just use the tools that are available to rotate it and position it into place. You can use the base layer as an indication of whether you're going through the floor or not, because you can see whether it's intersected by it. So we'll just scale it up a bit and move it over here, perhaps move it back a bit. Okay, so once you've positioned it properly, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. So what we're going to do now is choose a moment in time where we want the energy shield to start collapsing. We'll go with about here. So what we'll do is go into our energy shield composition and then go into our shield comp. And what we'll do is duplicate these first clips. So we'll press Ctrl D, move them up so we don't get confused. And we'll move them along to the frame which we chose for the energy shield to start collapsing. And what we'll also do is fade out the still frame so that the stabilization completely vanishes when the laser hits. So we'll just press T, add another keyframe, go forward a few, set it to 0. And we'll do the same with falling whispers. Go forward a few, set the keyframe, and down to 0. So now the shield gets hit, collapses, then tries to come back but fails, and then begins to disintegrate. But we want to make it look a little bit more obvious, so we'll change the tint colour to red of some of these layers. So we'll go into the effect controls and change the tint colour to red, and the tint amount as well. So now it's red and looks really sort of dangerous. So let's go and have a look to see if our disintegration fits well in the scene. Yep, that's looking good to me. One last thing we need to do is soften this edge a bit, because currently it's a bit too harsh. So what we'll do is just select the energy shield composition and double click the rectangle tool, which will add a mask around its edge. So we'll go into the mask options and change the mask feather to about 30 and the mask expansion to -30, which just softens the edge a bit and makes it look less harsh. Okay, so now that we've done that, what we can do is begin integrating this into the scene and making it look really cool. So what we'll do is select the energy shield comp and make sure the opacity is back up at 100% again. And we'll select shield comp, base and 3D tracker camera and pre-compose them. And we'll call this composition shield comp. And what we'll do is change the transfer mode to add and maybe change the opacity so it's slightly less bright. And what we can do now is add some displacement to our source footage using shield comp as the displacement map, and this will make it look like the light is being distorted by the shield. So we'll duplicate our shield composition and hide the original, and we'll add a fast blur to this new layer of about 3. And we'll pre-compose it, so we'll go to Layer, Pre-compose, and we'll call it Displacement Map, and we'll move all attributes into the new composition. And what we're going to do is now add a displacement map effect to the source footage. So we'll select it in our timeline, go to Effect, Distort, Displacement Map, and we'll change the displacement map layer to Displacement Map. And what we'll do is hide the displacement map layer because we don't actually need to see it now, and we can have a look at what changing these values does. So we'll just enable our unblurred shield composition again, and as we change the values you can see that it looks like the light is being bent by the shield. So we'll just enable wrap pixels around to get rid of this strange bleeding effect at the side. So we'll just change the vertical displacement to say 50 and the horizontal to -6, say. So as you can see, adding a displacement map really helps to sell the effect. Okay, so we're nearly finished now, but one more thing we're going to do before we wrap this up is add a light along this bottom edge so it looks like the shield is casting some light upon the sand. So what we'll do is go into the shield composition and enable the base layer. And what we'll do is change its colour, so we'll go to Layer, Solid Settings, and we'll make it similar to the shield's colour, so a light blue. And we'll scale it up, so we'll press S and scale it up. And just rotate it so that it faces the same way as the force field, and make sure it's level with the force field, so we can use these horizontal lines just to check that. So the basic idea is just to get this base layer to be just below the shield. And what we'll do is add a mask to this layer, so we'll double click it to bring up the layer, and we'll select the mask tool and just draw a quick arc. So once we've done that, we can just adjust these, and what we're going to do is just try and make it look like there's light being cast from the shield itself. So we'll just soften these edges up in a minute, and then we'll bring up the mask options and change the feather, say to 30, maybe a bit more actually, 60, and we'll just decrease the opacity. So now, as you can see, we've got a little bit of light spilling from the energy shield. So what we're going to do is just animate the opacity of this base layer so that it matches the opacity of the energy shield. So we'll set it to 0% whilst the energy shield is powering up. And we'll hit the stopwatch, and we'll increase the brightness to match the energy shield per frame. So when we get to the bit where the energy shield begins disintegrating and turning red, we'll just add a tint effect to tint it red as well. So we'll go to Colour Correction, Tint, change it red, and animate the amount to tint and the opacity. So once you're done, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. So now that we've animated its brightness, what we'll do is duplicate the 3D camera tracker, so we've now got two cameras, and select base as well, and pre-compose them. And we'll call it light. And we'll just disable this composition in here, and go back to our main composition, and select the composition we've just made, our light composition, and just drag it into this main composition. And what we'll do is just set its screen mode to add, and we'll duplicate the source footage, move it above light, and set the track matte of light to Luma Matte Inverted Source Footage. So now what this does is use the source footage as a Luma matte for this layer. So as you can see, it's pretty dark at the moment, but we've got some texture of the original shot coming through on this composition. So what we want to do is give it a bit more contrast and make it a bit more gritty. So what we'll do is select the track matte, and we'll delete the displacement map, and we'll go to Effect, Colour Correction, Curves, and just increase the contrast of this clip until we get the look we want. And we'll perhaps decrease the opacity just to make it look a little darker. So that just adds a bit of light variation to the base of the shield. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add some lasers. So we'll make a new solid, and call it laser and make it composition size. And what we'll do is add a beam effect to this layer. So we'll go to Effect, Generate, Beam. And what we'll do is change the length to 100%, so each of these points has a line going between them. And we'll set the starting thickness to really thick, and we'll change the transfer mode of the layer to Add, just to blend it in quite nicely. And we'll go to the point where the character trips, so that's about here. So what we'll do is animate this laser to look like it's coming in from the spaceship and making him trip. We'll increase the ending thickness a bit. We'll press Alt left bracket on the keyboard just to trim it a bit. So this is the first frame of the laser. So we'll just make sure it's really big in the perspective of the camera. So we'll really increase the starting thickness, so the perspective looks like it's about right. And we'll hit the stopwatches on starting point, ending point, starting thickness and ending thickness. And then we'll go one frame ahead and just change these values. So we'll decrease the starting thickness and the ending thickness. This is just to make it look like it's flying through the air. And we'll press Alt right bracket just to trim it. So once you've gone through your footage and added all the lasers you want, it's time to just add a few flashes to make them look a little bit more impactful. So what we'll do is make a new solid, we'll call it Flash, and make it square, so 720 by 720 pixels, and make it a nice light yellow colour. And what we'll do is now hold down the rectangle tool button with our mouse and select the ellipse tool that comes up. And now we'll double click it, and this makes a circular mask on the layer. So we'll go into the mask options and feather it, and we'll bring down the mask expansion. And what we'll do as well is set the transfer mode to Add. So now we'll go to the first laser and we'll animate the mask expansion. So we'll set it so that it disappears initially, and then we'll move one frame ahead, make it so it comes a bit bigger, so it suddenly flashes on impact, but then we'll go a few frames ahead and fade it out again, so it's like a sudden flash and then fades out. So now that we've made that, we'll just trim it down to size, duplicate it and add it to the other lasers. So now that we've got our lasers done, we'll just do the final step, which is to add some colour correction. So we'll go to Layer, New, Adjustment Layer, and we'll go to Effect, Colour Correction, Curves, and just change these values until we get a look we want. So I'm just going to go to the red channel and increase the brightness at the top, but in the lows I'm going to bring it down. And now we'll go to the blue channel and bring the highlights of the blue down and increase the shadows. And that's a really quick colour grade, but looks okay. Maybe we'll make it a little bit brighter, add a bit more contrast. So all there is to do now is add a few sound effects and maybe add a CinemaScope crop, and you'll have a clip that looks like this.
Contact at base 419! I need to back up!
So, I hope you found this tutorial interesting and useful, and I hope it exemplifies the many uses that we can put drag and drop to. So, I'm Matthew Perks, and thank you for watching.